I'm Andrea Giles, and you're listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, episode number 107, My Biggest Lesson from 2022. Hello, and welcome to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, where courageous women learn not only to heal from their spouse's betrayal, but to become the boldest, truest, most decisive, and confident versions of themselves ever. If you know there's more for you than the life you're currently living, but don't quite know how to get there, you are in the right place. Stick around to learn how to create a life that will knock your own socks off. Is it possible? It is, and I'm here to show you how. I'm your host, Andrea Giles. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hello, everybody. Welcome to podcast number 107. It's the first podcast of 2023. I am excited to be here. I'm recording this at night while my baby's sleeping and as I prepare to travel once again in the morning. I have been thinking a lot about what I need to say, what would be the most useful. And I thought that I would share with you today what my biggest lesson from last year was. There were lots of different lessons, lots of different things that I learned, but there is one that really, really stands out that I want to talk about today, as I think that it will help you as well. So this past year, lots of things worked well. I had my baby just before the end of the year in 2021. Then I went on maternity leave for the first quarter of 2022. I had some pretty difficult personal trials that came up in 2022 and at the end of 2021, in addition to having a baby and just a bunch of things at the same time. When I came back, I launched my No in 90 group for the first time. I've now run that 3 different times and been able to help lots of women get really clear on where they're going, what direction they want to go after infidelity. The thing that I have learned the most in all of the things, all the ups, all the downs, all the in-betweens, is this concept called duality. What is duality? It is that 2 things can be true at the same time, and that we can experience 2 very different, strong emotions at the same time, 2 very different experiences of things at the same time, and that it's okay. What happens when we experience this duality that I'm going to spend this conversation with you talking about is the term cognitive dissonance. I'm sure you've heard this term. Cognitive dissonance is where we can see these 2 things and we feel a lot of discomfort because we can't quite register. Like if we're used to thinking one way and suddenly we're presented with a different way, our brain is going to bring up dissonance, disagreement, like going, no, that can't be true. That can't be right. And then often what happens is when we're able to hold on to that cognitive dissonance instead of just rejecting the one because it feels off, it will actually lead us forward into more truth. It's not amazing. One example of this from history is when scientists were studying light. What is light? Is light a wave or a particle? One group of scientists said it is a wave. Another group of scientists said, surely it has to be a particle. They held their ground. They argued this for a long time. But what we learned over time, what we have learned is that they are both true. Light is both a wave and a particle. How cool is that? Some family circumstances, some family examples around this are when a few nights ago, I was talking to my kids and they brought up, what would have happened if you and dad never got married? What would have happened if our mom never died? Conversations like that. And my son, Dallin, who is my stepson, technically, he told me that he doesn't think that he could say, I'm glad my mom died. But he said, but I'm really glad that you and dad are married. And I think that it's all worked out. And so he was in his own way telling me how he has been able to hold that duality, the duality of losing his mother and also being happy that he has the family that he has. Isn't that interesting? It doesn't have to be one or the other, right? Maybe this seems minor to you. Maybe this doesn't feel like a big deal to you, but I was raised very black and white. It is this way or it's this way, right? You can't have both. As the scriptures that I was raised with said, you cannot serve two masters, that you can't straddle the fence. You can't see both views or see truth in both views. It either is this or it's that. And so that has really caused some havoc for me around certain issues, like marriage issues, for example. Because if we have ideas in our head of what a good marriage looks like, and our marriage looks a little bit different, it can cause some real problems because our brain will want that certainty and can easily go to, well, I guess it's all terrible then. I guess I have a bad marriage. Or if we're thinking about our children, and our kids are not quite what we thought they would be. And they do things that we did not expect them to do, or they are people that we did not expect them to be. It can be really easy to go to this place of judging our children and thinking that they're doing it wrong because it doesn't look the way that we thought it did, or that we thought it would. But when we can hold space for what is actually true, and also hold in there what we thought, and feel that dissonance, something new will emerge. A new truth will emerge. One of the things that my kids have asked me more than once that I think is interesting is, hey, Mom, if you could go back and start over with Finley, that's my baby, that's now 1. If you could just go back and not know about her, like you wouldn't even know she existed, would you go back to that time and not have her, or would you choose to have her? If you didn't know, like you didn't know she was there, that she was even an option. And without missing a beat, I can say, oh, I would choose her every time. Because I didn't know how much joy this little human would bring to our family, to me personally, to our marriage, to my husband, to our children, to lots of people. She's just a joy. She's an absolute joy. But part of the duality in that is that this last year was really hard. And there was a lot for me to adjust to. There was a lot. It was hard for me at 44. I'm now 45. I turned 45 in July, to get used to having this little person who's totally dependent on you, to get used to nursing, to get used to having it cramp my style, right? I'd gotten pretty used to just being able to come and go as I pleased. And not so much anymore. I have a 1-year-old and she's still nursing, and it's just been a huge adjustment for me. So I can hold the duality of, on one hand, being so happy that she's here and being so madly in love with her. And on the other hand, saying, yeah, and it's been very hard. It's been a very hard adjustment for me. They can both be true, and it's okay. It's okay. All right. So let's talk about infidelity and duality. Part of the reason why people struggle so much with infidelity is, of course, it's a breach of trust, right? Of course, there's all of that. But part of it, too, is because as a society, we have labeled lots of different things, but we have labeled infidelity. We have labeled cheaters. We have labeled affairs. And when we think of affairs, we automatically judge. We automatically make assumptions. And so when I have clients whose spouse has had an affair or some kind of unfaithfulness in some way, it can be very hard for them to get to a place of duality where they can hold in one hand that their spouse really hurt them, really let them down, really hurt their marriage, and hold in the other hand at the same time that their spouse is a good person who maybe made a mistake. And it can be very challenging to their brain. And they want the certainty of it being, it's either this or it's that. He's good or he's bad, right? And with this duality, we're growing our capacity to hold both and to even make space for all the feelings of it at the same time. So it sounds like this. We can say, I'm really grateful for the growth that this has brought. I'm really grateful for how much our family has grown, how much I have grown, how much our marriage has grown. And I wish it never happened. Okay. That's duality. You can hold both and it's okay. It's okay. Why does this matter? For me personally, in my life, where this is taking me is more than ever stepping into becoming more of my own authority. From the mindset of it's either right or wrong, and if you're doing it different than this, then you're wrong and there's something wrong with you. That is a very fear-based way of looking at the world. And it feels scary. And for me, what I'm stepping into is keeping that in mind and also stepping out into my own authority and what feels true to me, even if it is contrary to maybe some of the things that I have subscribed to in the past. It's owning my own authority and holding space for both until I come to a new understanding. What about answers that never come? Back to infidelity. There may be questions you will never have the answer to in a way that really settles your mind, connects the dots. You can be happy, you can be healing, whether with your spouse or on your own. You can be happy that you're moving forward, and you can also hate that it happened, right? It's okay to not have all of the answers. It's okay to not have all the dots connected and to still move forward and kind of let go of it. In fact, I recommend it because there are going to be some things that we can beat our head against the wall trying to understand, trying to get answers to, and they won't come. But here's the beauty. As we grow our capacity to sit in the space of duality where we can let it be hard and let it be easy at the same time, as we let both things be, clarity simmers to the top. Truth simmers to the top. By not rushing the answers, by not rushing the process, we allow ourselves to be open to them. We allow ourselves to settle into them. Isn't that amazing? So how do we do this? It's a cultivating activity of allowing ourselves to be open and not shutting it down when it starts to get hot. And by hot, I mean when it starts to get uncomfortable. I am going to read you a quote about this. Okay, the quote is by someone named Bruce Lee. He says, "Be formless, shapeless like water. If you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it into a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend." And what that means is to be malleable, to be flexible, to not be so set on your ideas, on what you think is true, that you miss opportunities to step into the space of not knowing, of being open, of being curious. The beautiful thing about this is that the things that are true are still going to stand. We're not denying truth. We're not erasing truth. In fact, we're often strengthening truth by looking at all the options and being open to what else might be true. If something is true, it will still stand. Okay? So this malleability, like water, is being willing to be open, being willing to ask questions, to be willing to think deeply about something in a way that maybe you never have before. Okay? Another quote I want to share with you is by F. Scott Fitzgerald, a famous author. He said, "The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function." Isn't that amazing? In this article about him, it says this: "I guess what Fitzgerald is trying to tell us is that the hallmark of being top-notch is the ability to comfortably embrace two points of view that are simultaneously at odds with each other. In other words, embracing contradictions and avoiding the danger of holding on to apparent absolutes." Okay? So this is hard for people. It's hard, right? He talks in that quote about the most intelligent minds. And even for the most intelligent minds, it's hard because we want the certainty. We want to know. We want to be sure. But there are sometimes that's just not available to me without closing down my own intellect, without closing down my actual real experience of what I'm actually experiencing, what is actually true for me. So the key, my friends, is to grow your capacity to hold space for opposing views. Cultivate this allowance for opposing views. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing to be wrong about all of it. In relationships, be willing to be wrong. Also be willing to let yourself be right. We can be both. We can be both right and wrong. Okay? Let curiosity lead out. Let love lead out. Let courage lead out. A desire to connect deeper, to understand deeper, to pause what our typical reaction might be and see what else is there. This is duality. Two opposing views. And I used to think that if you had two opposing views in a relationship, like in a marriage, that it meant that you just needed to go end it if you had some things that you were so disagreeing on. And I've come to understand that that's part of what makes marriage interesting, is that you're not going to see eye to eye on everything, and that it's okay. And that the greater thing at play here is to learn to love each other well, even if you don't agree on everything. That's powerful, right? It's easier to love people when you all just get along and agree on everything. But the real power comes in loving when you don't agree on everything. Okay. One more little bit is that the other day at the end of the year, I was doing some journaling. And as I was writing about my year, it was interesting. One of the words that came up over and over, and it was the word alive. Alive, alive, alive. I felt really alive this last year. I felt like I was experiencing pain, and sometimes deep pain and deep joy. I experienced so much joy. I experienced wonder that I had this new little beautiful girl to love. I experienced awe in myself and what I've been able to create, that I've been able to grow my business while having my 7th biological child and 12th child as our blended family. I have felt some heartache at some different things that I'm navigating, and some loss and happiness and contentment and joy. My marriage has never been better, but we also experienced some hard times this past year. Both can be true. This is life, my friends. This is life. This is the good stuff. This is what it means to be alive. Not avoiding the hard, not dreading the other shoe dropping, but making space for it, knowing that you're resilient, knowing that you can handle all of it, and knowing that from holding the space for all of it, something beautiful will come through. Something beautiful will come through when you can hold the duality of both. It's like magic. All right, my friends, that's what I have for you today. So much love to you as always. If you are looking for ways to work with me, I have a new group opening up soon of NOAA 90. You can get on my wait list over on my website, andreagiles.com. That's the easiest way to reach me. That's what I will be doing soon, and I hope to see many of you inside that group. All right, take care, my friends. I'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast. If you would like to be kept in the know about upcoming free classes, new podcast episodes, and other ways of working with me, go subscribe to my weekly email. You can subscribe at andreagiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. Again, it's andreagiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. I will see you next time.